What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be working on my 2012 Ford GT Mustang, and we're going to be doing oil pump gears and a crank sprocket. A little bit of what's been done to this thing. We recently just did a Boss 302 intake manifold along with the JLT cold air intake. And then down here we have some nice BBK long tube headers, as well as a BBK catted X pipe because you can't get ones without cats anymore. It's got a spec clutch MGW shifter that's a race spec, one piece drive shaft, 8.8 rear end with 373 gears, Watts link upper and lower rear control arms that are adjustable, dual caliper hydro setup. That's basically the quick rundown of what's done to it. Obviously I got some nice Corbeau seats and harnesses with a harness bar. Back seats aren't in, but I'll put those in soon. Alright, so when you get your boundary oil pump gear and crank sprocket in, this is what you should have in the box once you open it up. If you got the upgraded crank balancer bolt, that's a tool to remove the harmonic balancer thing, I think. Oil pump gears, and then crank sprocket, and then some assembly lubricant. So step one is jack the car up. You can do just the front. I did the whole car because I had to do some other things. Once you do that, disconnect the battery and then drain your coolant. Remove the stock airbox or your cold air intake, the coolant reservoir thing right here. After that, you'll remove your radiator hoses and then take off the thermostat, and then we'll be taking the water pump off after that. Once you get the water pump off, we can go ahead and removing the valve cover covers, which will allow us to eventually pull the front cover off. But before we have to pull the front cover off, we got to remove the alternator, tensioners, harmonic balancer, and you will have to remove the fan for the radiator, and you can put some cardboard on here so you don't damage it while you're working on the front of the motor. Alright, so got the covers removed, and I removed the alternator down there as well, the tensioner and a pulley. Next up, we're going to be doing the harmonic balancer. I got the crank pulley off. The crank bolt wasn't wanting to budge with the Ryobi impact, so I had to use the Milwaukee. And I had to go buy this harmonic balancer pulley puller because these jaw pullers were not working at all. So once you get that off, you'll come down here on the underside of the car, and there's going to be 4 bolts on the oil pan. One's right there, and another one is kind of hiding right there in the center of the screen, and then it's going to be those 2 guys right there. Alright, so got all of the timing cover bolts out. Once you do that, you can see it move. You just pull on it on both sides evenly, and it should just slide right off. So removing the timing cover was quite easy. It just kind of wiggles off. Once you remove that, you're going to want to take these spark plugs out of both banks. Next, this is very critical, you're going to want to position the crank at 12 o'clock with the key. That's the little slot right here. At 12 o'clock. And then you're going to want to come over here and make sure that the timing mark on the chain where it's supposed to be, right there. After you mark it, you're going to want to take off this tensioner and then remove the guides, which will allow you to remove the chain. once you do all that, you got to remove the pickup tube off of the oil pump cover. Do not, there's 2 bolts, they're 10 mil. Do not drop them in the oil pan or you're gonna have a bad time. The back one, or like this one over here, is kind of tricky. You can use a magnet when you're unscrewing them, break them loose, and then use a magnet in your fingers to get them out without dropping them. Alrighty, so now that you have the oil pump out of the car, it's time to open it up. So it'll be a T30 bit. Okay, so this is what we got going on. Gross stock oil pump gear. Boop. Okay, so once you get the assembly lube on the oil pump gear, it'll be time to install it down there again. Okay, so now we have the oil pump housing assembled and all torqued down, and now it's ready to go back in the car. Alright, so I accidentally jumped ahead of myself and forgot to video some steps, but got the pickup tube bolted on. That's probably honestly the worst part about this whole job. I was fearful of dropping a bolt down in the pan. After that, I put the oil pump cover on. That was pretty easy and simple. Crank sprocket next, and then the chains are on, no tensioners yet. For reference on the timing, to make sure you didn't jump timing when you're pulling these off, because I did jump a little bit of timing, I think. But there's going to be a marking on here. You can see right there. And then there's a blue link on the chain. There's 2 per chain. The other one's down there for that chain. And then over here on this side, you're going to line that blue link up with that marking. And then down here, there are 2 blue links on each chain, one here and one back there. And you will match those up to the black dash mark on the crank sprocket. And while that is positioned at 7 o'clock, the key should be at 12 o'clock. So just make sure everything looks like this, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so a little bit on how these work, because I didn't really know how they worked, and I couldn't really find anything on the internet. But basically, that compresses. There's some locking mechanism on here, and where that screw is, there's a spring in there that presses the same type of locking mechanism. You can kind of see it in there. So you have to push that piece backwards so you can slide this down, and once you do that, you insert, I don't know, like a paper clip or anything small in this hole to lock all this down in place, so that way there's no resistance when you're putting the tensioner on the guides. Here, so I got this in a vise, compressed it a little bit, and with whatever this is, I am able to move that locking mechanism back. So with that back, crank it back. And now you can stick this down in here. Hands are all slippery. Just like that. You got it locked down. And then once you get it tightened down, you'll still have to torque it down, but you can just pull this pin out if it wants to come out. Just like that. And that tensioner is on. Gotta do the other side though. So on this side, you're gonna have to come over here and crank on this cam. This is a little difficult for one person. So grab a wrench, put it on the cam. There's a place for the wrench. I'll show you where. Right there. There's your hole. Just like that. And then you'll have to rotate it one way or another to take the slack off this bottom chain, so you can get the tensioner in place. Whew. So those are on. I need to pull this pin out. So everything's tight now. Chains are tight. Timing guides are tight. Tensioners are tight. Next will be the timing cover. But before you put that on, you're going to want to put some silicone or RTV or whatever you use in a few spots. You're going to want to put it on both sides of the motor, obviously. But where the valve covers meet the head, here and here, on both sides of the motor. And then where the heads meet the block, here and here, and then over here and over here as well. And then you're going to put some down here where the block meets the oil pan. Not all the way around because there's a gasket, but maybe just on the corners where they meet up. Really quick, before we put the timing cover on, to make sure everything's going correct and smooth, I wanted to spin the motor over to make sure the timing is correct. So alright, everything seems to be going good. Got all that stuff done. You're going to want to use some gasket sealer maker stuff now and put it in a few different spots on the motor. Here, here, here where the head meets the block, here where the head meets the block, here where the block meets the oil pan, same over here where the block meets the oil pan, where the head meets the block, where the head meets the block, and on the corners of the heads. Alright, time to put the front cover on. I got the RTV on down there. Once you get all the timing cover bolts back on and tight, next I would recommend doing the valve covers because you want to seal up everything before this RTV dries. So that'll be next. And once that's done, crank pulley with the stretch belt and then all the accessories and things like that. Slowly making our way there. Okay, I got that valve cover on. A little bit of time and there's not that much RTV there, so I'm gonna add a little bit more. I'm gonna cry if this thing leaks when I'm done with this. Alright, that is on. It's obviously not tightened down, but it's on. Okay, so crank pulley is on, our harmonic balancer is on. The ARP bolt is in and torqued down to 100 foot-pounds. Now it's time to put the stretch belt on, and to do that we're going to use some zip ties. We're going to put it on the AC compressor and then zip tie it like halfway on the harmonic balancer. And then finally spin the crank around so it will slip itself on. Got the alternator on, plugged these two cam phasers in, putting these spark plugs in right now. I'm gonna do that side in a second. After that, tensioner is gonna go on, and then that little pulley right there, and then the water pump. Boom, all right, got the water pump on. Next, I'll do the water pump pulley. Got the water pump on with the pulley, and the belt is on now. Next, I'll be doing the fan. It's gonna go right here. And then all the hoses, and then just the rest of all that stuff. All right, got all this bolted up and tightened down. All the hoses are on. Everything's looking good. The fan's in. Just gotta put the reservoir on, cold air intake, a little catch can, and it's done, finally. It took me about 2 days, not 2 full days completely, but 2 days here and there coming in and working on it. I would say you could do this in 1 day if you have a decent bit of mechanical knowledge and don't run into any issues whatsoever at all. more so of a weekend kind of job, I feel like, but it's definitely doable in a day. Overall, I've never done anything like this extensive, especially by myself without any like other supervision to make sure things are going along smoothly. And honestly, it wasn't too bad having the right tools, the time, and a little bit of space, and like not being outside in the elements and stuff like that. Really makes a difference, and like you can pretty much just do anything. If someone else can do something, you can do it too. And that's what I've kind of learned with cars and things like that. So if you're skeptical about trying this at home and thinking about taking it to a shop, if you're not mechanically inclined, I'd probably take it to a shop. If you have some sort of mechanical knowledge with cars especially, then I think you'd be fine doing it by yourself or with a friend or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple, I wouldn't say pretty simple job, but it's not hard. It's just time consuming. So it's either about to make really cool and awesome sounds or really bad and gnarly sounds. So let's see what happens. I spun the crank around and everything seems good, but I don't know where my keys are. Everything seems good, so fingers crossed. I'd say it worked. I didn't mess anything up, so that's awesome. I'm proud. See?